Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. All right, my name is Marshall Byer, and I'm the coordinator of educational technology for Turlock Unified. Just a little bit of info about myself. This is my 16th year in education. Prior to this position, I taught 4th and 5th grade for 8 years, and then I was an ed tech coach for 4 years, and then this is my 4th year as the coordinator of educational technology. In 2018, I got my master's in educational technology, and when I wrote my thesis was focused around digital citizenship. So this is something that I've been kind of passionate about for the last 8 years or so. But I mean more than that, but that's what I was doing kind of research on and stuff. So tonight we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to talk about online safety. We're going to talk about some tips at home. We're going to talk about online gaming, and then I'm going to share some resources for you. If you didn't already, which I'm sure most of you did, but I do have some handouts in the front that give you some tips on certain social media applications, as well as some information on online gaming. So why is this important? Why are we kind of talking about this tonight? And so the reason why this is kind of important is back in 2007, the smartphone came out, and it was introduced, and it was kind of revolutionary because it was, everything in your pocket. It was your phone, it was your camera, it was your calculator, it was kind of everything in one. Fast forward to 2015, 92% of teens and young adults own a smartphone back in 2015. Fast forward to 2022, 95% of teens and young adults own a smartphone. And then if you even dive down a little deeper, 45% of American children ages 10 to 12 have a smartphone. So these are things that are with them constantly, and so they're constantly interacting with them. So these are things that we kind of need to be mindful of. If we're looking at the number of smartphone users from 2016 to 2022, it jumped from about 3,600 to almost 6,600, almost 6,700 nationwide smartphone users. And those are between the ages of 18 and 65. And then the average person spends about 4 hours on their smartphone, which you think about that and you're like, there's no way that I spend 4 hours on my phone. But I'll show you later on, there's some applications that they're building them into the phones now that will give you screen time, and you can see how long you've spent in each application or each thing. And I'm as guilty as anyone that there's times that I check that and I'm like, good God, I spent 2.5 hours on my phone. Like, what am I doing? So, and that's an average. The average person spends an average of 4 hours on their phone. So the use of screen time obviously went up a bunch during the pandemic. And when they were using their screens, in 2015, 2015 tweens, so between the ages of like 10 and 12, it was an average of entertainment screen time per day was about 4.5 hours. And then teens, it was upwards of 6.5 hours. And then jumped to 2021, for those tweens, it was about 5.5 hours. And for the teens, it jumped up to almost 9 hours of entertainment screen time. And then during the pandemic, almost 4 in 5 students between the ages of 8 and 18 went to online learning outside of their school day. So they were doing online school, but then outside of the school day, they were also doing online learning. And some of the things that they would go online to learn about was like things that they were interested in. So these stats I got from a resource that I'm going to share with you. It's Common Sense Media, and they put out a lot of resources for educators as well as parents. And so these are kind of the breakdowns of what they were getting online to look for. They were looking for like things that they were interested in, or creating something with digital media, or sharing something that they created or accomplished online. And then playing video games together was the top way that young people hung out during the pandemic. They all played video games together. But there was a significant difference in the way that boys and girls connected online during the pandemic. And so playing video games together was like the number one thing. Hung out together virtually on Zooms or FaceTimes, watching TV shows or movies together, and then attending virtual clubs or virtual classes. So it was either they did it every week, or they did it every month, or they just ever did it at all. And so what we can do, what this is all kind of showing us, is that we can help show our kids how to be good citizens, both online and offline, because really, I know it's called digital citizenship, but really it's just like citizenship in general, like being a good person, whether it's online or in person, you kind of are hitting the same kind of categories. So first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about internet safety. So what is internet safety? So internet safety is ways that you can keep yourself or your students safe while using online tools. And so some safety tips that you can kind of implement are keeping the devices in high traffic areas. So making sure that the device is in a spot where most of the family is interacting. We are not, taking them to the bedrooms and doing those things. It's kind of in high traffic areas. Establishing limits. I have 2 kids too, so these are things that I'm going through as well. And so we've established limits that I'm going to show you guys later, ways that you can, with parental controls, you can establish limits on the amount of time that they're using a device, whether it's a phone or a tablet. And then you can even break it down to specific apps, like you can allow them to have a certain amount of time on each application. Like we said, the internet can be mobile. So when internet came out, like for me, it was a desktop computer that stayed at my house. Now the internet is in my pocket and I can use it and access it whenever I want. Surfing the internet with your kids, doing stuff with your kids when they're using their devices, having it be part of the conversation that you guys talk about things that they like to do online. You'll notice that a lot of things that we talk about is having those conversations with your kids about things that they're doing. No different than if they were going to go down the street and go play at someone's house, you would want to kind of talk to them about what they're doing and whatnot. So those same kind of rules apply to this as well. Know who's connecting with your kids online. Know that the apps that they're using, is it something that they can chat with other people? Do they know who they're chatting with? Having those conversations with them. And making sure that your child continually dialogues with trusted adults about online safety, whether that's you, whether that's an aunt and uncle, grandma, grandpa, teacher, someone, just as long as they're talking to somebody about online safety. And so with internet safety and with going on to different applications, going to different websites, making sure that you have a secure password is something that's vitally important these days. It's your first, like when I go and I talk to kids about it, I tell them it's their first line of defense against intruders, because if they can get to your password and they can get into your accounts, then they have access to whatever information and data that you have in there. I always tell them to not repeat their passwords, like don't have the same password for every single application that they use or every single website that they use, because if they have access to that one password, now they have access to everything. And then something that I use is I use a password generator. So I use certain applications that will create passwords for me. And so that application is what's called encrypted, which means only I have access to it because I have a certain key and a certain password for it. And so I use that. So I just have to remember one password to get into that application, but then it'll generate passwords for me, ones that like I couldn't even try to repeat what they are because you can set, it's like 30 characters with this, and I'm like, I don't even know what the password is. So I guess that helps out. So if someone were to try to say, give me your password, I could literally say, I don't know what it is. digital footprint. We're going to talk about digital footprint next. And so your digital footprint is all the information online about you, either posted by you or by other people, intentionally or unintentionally. So if you were to follow me and my personal accounts online, you would notice that if you talk to anybody that I follow, you'd notice that I don't have any pictures of my kids online. Because once I start posting pictures of my kids, I'm unintentionally adding to their digital footprint, whether I knew it or not. And so your digital footprint can be searched, it can be copied, it can be passed on, it could be seen by a large invisible audience. So these are things that when I go in and I talk to kids, I tell them, things that you post online, it's part of your digital footprint. And I give them the example of, when you walking on the beach and you have your footprints behind you, people can kind of follow where you are. And when the waves come and they wash them out, then people don't know. But these footprints, they don't wash away. Once they're there, they're there. And usually I'll get a student will say, well, what if I deleted it? What if I deleted the post? Then no one's going to see it. And then I would tell them, well, you don't know who saw it before you deleted it. And what if somebody screenshotted it and now they have it and you could delete it, but they have it on their device. So I usually use this as a way to kind of talk about online safety and digital citizenship and making sure that we're posting things that are appropriate and something that if 30 years in the future you went back and saw the things that you were posting, would you be okay with those types of things that you were posting? And so I always tell students, I tell them to think before they post things. I tell them to ask, is what you're posting, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if you can't say yes to all those things, then maybe you shouldn't post the thing that you wanted to post. And I know sometimes we read things online and we want to, kind of post back and get into online discussions, we'll say discussions. But usually I tell them, type it out, walk away from it for 15 minutes, come back to it and delete it. And so at least you get it out of your system and don't actually post it anywhere and then just delete it. Type it somewhere where you can just keep it like on your phone or something. And then you kind of get it out of your system, but it doesn't actually go online anywhere. And so usually I tell kids, I'm like, why is your digital footprint important? Why do you need to worry about it? I'm 13 years old. Why do I need to care about my digital footprint right now? And so I tell them that it could cause you to not get a job or it could cause you to not get into college. And when I'm sure like most of us, when we applied for jobs and we applied to college, I filled out a physical paper application and I would go down to the place, fill out the application, I would go in for the interview, and based on my physical application and based on the interview, that would determine if I was hired or not. Same thing for when I applied for university, filled out a paper application, all that stuff. And I tell them now, when you guys apply for jobs or you apply to college, it's all online. You do a digital application, they'll check your application, but then they'll also go in and they have someone at each job site or at each university that will check your social media and they'll check your digital footprint and they'll see what kind of citizen you are, not only in your application, but then what kind of person are you online. So I tell them, it could cause you to not get a job or it could cause you to not get into college. But then I flip it and I say, but it could also help you get a job and it can also help you get into college, because if you're applying to a university and they see all of these extracurricular activities that you're doing and all these things that you're doing, to help promote yourself, then it could help you out. So I always kind of tell them, be mindful of what you're posting. It could help you or it could also hurt you too. Next, we're gonna talk about cyberbullying. And what cyberbullying is it's doing something on the internet, usually repeatedly over and over again, to make another person feel angry, sad, or scared. And so some examples of cyberbullying are sending a mean email or text message. So usually when I'm talking to students about this, usually they'll say, well, how can a text message be cyberbullying? It's not online, I'm just texting somebody. And then I would connect this to digital footprint. So I tell them, okay, if I'm texting you, it's not online, but what if someone, and I know I've seen it tons of times with, Twitter threads or other DM conversations where they'll screenshot that and then they go and they post it online. Now it's a cyber thing. Now it becomes part of your digital footprint. Now it's online kind of thing. Posting mean things about somebody on a website, making fun of somebody in an online chat. Those are all kind of brief examples of what cyberbullying is. And now it's even expanded to, making videos about people on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever social media platform that they're using. So then what if you're talking to your student or a student's friend, what should they do if they are being cyberbullied? And first, I always tell them to never talk to people that they don't know. If they receive a bullying message, don't answer it, but save it. So usually their first reaction is they want to delete it because they don't want to see it, they don't want to deal with it. But I always tell them to not delete it because they can use it as evidence later on. Get off the computer or the phone or the tablet or whatever and just kind of physically distance yourself from the situation. Talk to a trusted adult about it, whether it's mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, teacher, somebody. And then I always tell them don't delete anything because you could use that as proof for evidence. I know when I was early in this position, there was an incident with some students at elementary school where they were making fun of somebody in an Instagram DM chat, and somebody screenshotted that conversation, and then they were able to kind of deal with it because it was becoming part of a situation at school. So then the school got involved. So never delete. If you're getting cyberbullying messages or stuff, don't delete it so it can be used as evidence. So what should you do if you suspect that other people are getting cyberbullied? Encourage them to talk to somebody about it. When I was going through and I was doing my thesis work, a lot of students, I talked to 7th and 8th graders. A lot of them said that they didn't feel like they could tell anybody because they felt like nobody could do anything anyway, so what's the point of telling anybody? Which they may feel that way, but there are ways that we can try to help at least. So we always want to encourage them to talk to an adult about it. Tell the person that is being bullied that you care about them and that you want to help them, because they may feel like that everyone's against them and that nobody's here to help them. And then I always tell them to not talk about it. Don't spread rumors. Don't say, hey, did you hear that so-and-so, like this is happening to them? Because they're already kind of going through enough. They don't need more things on top of that. And then I would always tell them to, if they could, tell the cyberbully to stop. Even though they might not stop, at least that person knows that there's people kind of on their side, in their corner, helping them. And then next we're going to talk about online gaming. And so the number of gamers worldwide this is just from 2015 to 2022, these are the numbers are in the billions, just to kind of let you know. So in 2015, there was around 2 billion worldwide gamers. That has jumped almost a billion in 2022 to 3.09 gamers online. And that can go from anything from playing an online Switch game to playing PC games. Now what you have, Xbox is, they have Xbox Live, they have PlayStation, all these games now have online components to them. And then Twitch viewers, which Twitch is a platform that's usually used for streaming video games and stuff. The amount of viewers from 2012 to 2022 last year. So in 2012, there was about 100,000 viewers, to 2022, almost 3 million average viewers viewing online streaming gaming. Just to kind of give you an insight of how much online gaming has kind of exploded in the last 6 to 7 years. So there are some benefits to online gaming. So it can have a positive impact. It can help cognitive, emotional, and social skills. It can enhance problem solving and strategizing skills. It can also help cooperation in multiplayer team games. And then you can also make new friends and socialize. Those are some benefits of online gaming. Preventing cyberbullying for gamers. So cyberbullying happens a lot in gaming. So playing the game with your child and or observing the game. So when they're playing, online, like being there, that kind of goes back to having the devices in a high traffic area. Knowing what gaming communities, social media apps that your student is using and or a part of. So again, going back to kind of being in that conversation, having that conversation with your child about what games are they playing, what games are they a part of, what are they doing online. Obviously, and also like establishing rules and boundaries around the amount of time that they spend gaming. And then, like we talked about, just having those open lines of communication about their digital life, like talking to them about what they're doing, talking to them about what apps they're playing on, what games they're using, those types of things. And so some tech tips for home. So a few rules that you could have that can make a major impact in your home. Like we talked about, having limits. So these are things that in our house, I've even, my kids are younger, so my kids are 7 and 3. So we're starting that out early. I've even implementing stuff for myself because I'm trying to be a good role model for them. And so doing things like not bringing our devices to the kitchen to the dinner table, putting them away, at certain times of night. So we're like having non-screen time, trying to do things like on the weekends, having, days where we don't try to use them as much. So trying to just set those limits and try to be that positive role model for them. Keeping the devices out of the bedroom. We don't even, and this is just the way our house is. I'm not saying this is the right way, but like in our house, like we don't even have TVs in our bedrooms. Like we're trying to keep all technology and stuff out of our rooms. When we end the day and like we go to charge our phones and stuff, we keep them like away from our beds, my wife and I, just so it's not a temptation to get on it before we go to bed to try to keep it out of the bedrooms. Setting daily limits like we talked about. Learn how to use each device. So there are some times that I've talked to parents and they're like, I bought this device for my kid, I just handed it to them, but like I don't even know how to use it. So learn how to use the devices that your kids are using. And then something that some families find are setting up device contracts. So to be able to use your device, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to have your homework finished. You have to have chores done, those types of things. Common Sense Media has some like templates that I'll share with you guys that they already have pre-made like contracts made. So those are just some kind of ideas that you could come up with to help with tech use around the home. And then learning about the privacy and resources for each application that are used. The companies are doing a better job now of sharing that information and sharing like what data is being shared with the applications and what data they're pulling. In my position, that's something that I look at a lot before we use an application in the district. That's something that I do is I go through and I look at their privacy policy because I want to make sure that the applications that our students are using aren't pulling a bunch of data. They're not, pulling personal identifiable information and stuff. So it's something that I do for my job, but then it's also something that I do personally at home too. To the point where when we're looking at stuff and my wife will send me screenshots and she's like, hey, this is an app that our son wants to use. Have you checked out? Can you check out the privacy? Is it okay? So I'm doing it at home and I'm doing it at work too. So some resources to share with you all. So I'm going to go through. Personally, we use Apple devices at our home. So we use iPhones, iPads, those types of things. So I know more about that, but I do have resources for like Android devices and stuff as well. So if you have iPhones, and so the screenshots that I'm sharing are going to be more of iPhones, but it applies to iPads and stuff as well. So when this is now part of their operating system. So when we were talking about earlier about an average person spends 4 hours on their phone, they have screen time built into the device now, so you can check your screen time. So if you go into settings and go to screen time, it'll show you your average daily use. And so it'll give you the kind of the week overview at the top, so you can see your usage on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday throughout the week. You can also go in and you can see your usage for each application, how long you spent on each app that you have on your device. They have something called downtime, where you can set up downtime where only certain applications that you choose are allowed and phone calls will be available. So you can have it set where come 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever, downtime kicks in, and the only apps that are quote unquote available are, phone and camera, and which you can pick which ones that you want available. There's also the always allow section, so no matter what, those apps are always available. And then they have content and privacy restrictions, so you can go in and you can set, in Safari, my kid can go to these websites only, and if they try to go to other websites, it wouldn't allow them to go to those websites. So during downtime, and this has changed a little bit with the recent software that they put out, but it's essentially the same. So you can have a schedule. So you can have it set. So like I had mine. So these are screenshots of my actual phone. And so I have my downtime set from 5 to 7. And so during that time, I have majority of my apps blocked, where I could still get into them, but there's a password that's connected to it. And so it's a barrier for me. So I'm physically or mentally like choosing to open up that application. And so you can set those limits. And then within those limits, if they hit their limit, they would get this screen. It would say your time's up. So certain applications I have, I'll set, 30 minutes, or I'll set an hour, or I'll set 2 hours, whatever. And then when I hit that limit, it kicks to this screen and it'll say your time's up. And so as a student, you could click OK, and then the icon just kind of grays out, and then you wouldn't be able to use it for the rest of the day. Or there's a button at the bottom where it says ask for more time. And so as a parent, you could say, okay, I'll give you 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes or whatever. Or you could say, sorry, you're done for the day, kind of thing. And then if they clicked on ask for more time, you could say 15 minutes, an hour, or you could give them access for all day, kind of thing. And then during the screen time, there's also the app limits. So you could set time limits for each application, and then you would select which applications you wanted. So like and you could set the kind of the frequency at which those limits are hit. So is that that limit is set every day, or on the weekdays it's this much time, but on the weekends you get a little more time or something. So like these are some of the limits that I have set up for myself. So like YouTube, 1 hour every day, and then 30 minutes for Instagram, 30 minutes for Twitter, and I try to stick to those limits. Am I good about it every time? No, but I try to set those limits for myself. And so when we were talking about the data that certain applications use, on iPhones and iPads, it's kind of built into the app stores now. So when you click on an application in the App Store, if you scroll down, it'll show you data that's linked to you and data that's not linked to you that this application is pulling. So these are 2 examples. One is Safari, which is Apple's web browser. The other one is Google Chrome, which is Google's web browser. Just to give you kind of the difference between what an application may or may not take. So on the left is Safari, where data that's linked to you is user contact, identifiers, diagnostics. where on Google Chrome side, there's a bunch of other things that they're pulling and that's linked to you. Then there's data that's not linked to you, so that's data that they're pulling anonymously. Some other kind of examples that I pulled here are Roblox, Snapchat, TikTok, data that is being used linked to you. There's even some that is data that's used to track you. Just be mindful of when you're going on and you're downloading applications that you can kind of go in and you can check what those applications, like what data are they're pulling and what information that they're getting anonymously or non-anonymously from your use of those applications. And then there's some that they don't collect any data. And so they'll tell you that the developer does not collect any data from using this application. So there are some out there that don't collect any data. And so that was more of like iPhone, iPads, but if you have Android, Samsung devices, they do have similar things. They have the same type of like screen time and app management through their platform as well. They have a feature where a student or your child would have to get permission to download an application. So this is also on iPhones and iPads as well. We have these set up for my son. So if he wants to download something, he presses download, and then myself and my wife get a notification saying, you know, he wants to download this application, yes or no. And then once we approve it, then it's available for him to download on his device. And so they also have screen time, and you can set up limits for certain days of the week, certain times. So one resource that I've mentioned a few times is Common Sense Media. And so Common Sense Media is a nonprofit organization, and they put out a bunch of resources for educators, but they also put out information for parents and everything from online safety. They put out information about movies and books, and they'll do like parent ratings. So they'll poll parents and they'll say, you know, there's this movie that came out. What do parents feel is like the appropriate age for it, or what do kids think the appropriate age is? So there's times where, you know, my kids want to watch something, and I'm like, well, like let me talk to mom about it, and then I kind of pull up my phone. I'm like, okay, let me check Common Sense Media real quick. I'm like, okay, that one might be okay. So then it's a cool tool. I use it a lot when I was teaching, and in this position, they have a whole digital citizenship curriculum and stuff that our teachers use, but they have information from, like I said, from movies, books, music, all those things, applications, and they kind of give a breakdown of all those in all those categories. And so Common Sense Media, like I said, for parents, they give ratings and reviews for movies, for games, for TV shows, websites, books, music. There's even like a parent concern section and like a parent blog where you can look up, you know, like how much screen time is appropriate screen time for a 10-year-old or for my kid. And so they have those types of kind of topics that you can look up. They have a digital glossary, which I'm sure the kids in the audience probably won't like this, but that's okay. So you know how like you see things, people posting, and you're like, okay, what does that acronym mean? Like, what does that word even mean? They have a digital glossary that'll kind of give us the definition so we kind of understand what they're trying to talk about. And so, like I said, they have a kind of, they call it parent concerns. So they have different videos, how much tech is too much for my toddler. They have different areas. You can search by topic. You can go on, you can read. They have a blog, like how much, you know, like I said, how much time is okay for my kids. You can look up different topics. You can categorize it by the age. So they have it for preschool, little kids, big kids, tweens, teens. And so you can kind of filter down by the age of your students. They also have, like I said, different topics. They have it in Spanish as well, so if you needed it translated in Spanish, they have that. I'm not sure what other languages they have, but I know that they have English and Spanish. And so these are just some more of their kind of FAQ sections of, parents will post questions and then other parents get on and they kind of respond back and they answer. So it's a nice little resource for parents. And so one of the things that I also wanted to go over, which you should have, if you don't have it, we have copies up here, is Legacy Health Endowment put together a guide about what you wish you knew about social media apps. So in those handouts, they break down not every single social media app, but they break down a lot of them, a lot of the popular ones. So Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, and they kind of go through and they talk about different privacy settings. They talked about what the application is, how it's being used, and so it kind of helps us have a better understanding of what those applications are and what those applications are doing. And then they also recently put out a guide for video gamers and parental controls and online safety. So what parents wish they knew about, like I said, online video games, different parental controls, and online safety. And so they have things like 7 tips to give your gamer, parental controls and resources, the different ESRB ratings. So on the games, like what those different ratings stand for and what they mean and what those age groups are for. So you just have a better kind of understanding and you're more well equipped when your kid's asking like, I want this game or I want that game. You kind of have a better understanding of what the ratings are and what those things about those games are. And so just wanted to give you, and this is in the packet, but I just wanted to share a couple of stats just so we're aware. So 8%, almost 9% of American youth gamers between the ages of 8 and 18 are technically clinically addicted to playing video games. And the FBI estimates that there's between 500,000 to 750,000 sexual predators that are active on the internet at any given time. And gaming is one of their avenues that they try to go in. 1 in 5 kids say that they've been sexually solicited online. So just that goes back to having those conversations with your kids, knowing what games they're playing. Are they playing online games that have chat and those types of things, because that's their kind of their avenue that they're trying to go at. 29% of kids will give out personal information if asked online, willingly or unbeknownst to them that they're giving out their information. When I did this presentation earlier this year, and I actually had someone from Turlock PD with me, but he has since retired, so I'm trying to find somebody else that can help out. But he was talking about, and that's what his focus was, like, I forget what his title was, but basically like online forensics, like he dealt with, this was his like avenue. And he talked about kids giving out personal information, like sometimes they do it and they don't even know that they're doing it. Like when they're posting pictures, like people can tell like, oh, in the background, like it looks like you're in a school bathroom. And then sometimes when you're taking photos, there's GPS attached to those photos. And then people can start connecting the dots of, okay, I can tell that these photos look like you kind of live in this area, and they can kind of track down where the kid's taking pictures and stuff. 17% of kids say that they have been cyberbullied in the last 30 days, and 34% of kids say that they have just been cyberbullied just in general. And so 7 tips to give your gamer. This is in the packet that you have, but just like we said, beware of voice masking. So while they're playing online, sometimes people use applications to make them sound like they're a little boy or a little girl when they're really not. Beware of strangers. They advise that gamers under 15 play only with people that they've met in person and that are parent approved. I'll let you guys go through, you guys have this in your hands, but they go through a lot of good tips that you can share with your children. And then again, they have a glossary too. So, when they're online doing chats and stuff, like they'll be posting things that we may not know, but they have the glossary there for us, so we can kind of understand what they're posting. Another resource is the National Online Safety, and they do something similar to Legacy Health Endowment. I don't have the actual physical handouts for them, but I do have a website that has all this information on there for you. And they go through and they put together a bunch of parent resources for all different kinds of categories. And theirs are, screen addiction, violent behavior. They have an app on both iOS and Android, so you can pull resources about different applications and those types of things. They have that stuff on there as well. And so here's some more things like 12 social media online safety tips. They have they just have a ton of resources online for parents to access. So we're just better informed on online safety and those types of things. I do have a website that has links to everything that I shared. I don't have the presentation on there, but I can put the presentation on there. But there's links to Common Sense Media, there's links to the National Online Safety, there's links to Legacy Health Endowment and their resources that you guys have physically, but I have those digitally as well. And so I will work with Marie to get that onto our district website as well, so it's accessible to people. And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much.